camera. Hey!
What's up, witches?
What's up?
I'm Linda.
And I'm John.
And today we are continuing our series of pantheons.
This one's a little bit different. Okay, so, wow. Why was that so nasally? Okay. So, from here on out, the pantheons are going to describe their gods as having green, blue, red, and describe and even in some describe them as yellow gods. That's the color of their skins. So, not to quote a semi-famous ancient astronaut archaeologist, but they're not aliens. We're not saying they're aliens, but they're aliens. No. So, several of these, whether they call them Sky Brothers or Teachers from the Sky, there's numerous names for them. We don't necessarily, well, we do want to imply that there's the possibility, but we do not. We definitely do not want to. What's the word I'm looking for? Offend anyone that may still follow that, especially since the indigenous peoples still follow this, and we mean no offense. But what's written is what's written, and what's told by word of mouth is what's been told by word of mouth. So we're just going with what we have. So tonight we're going to talk about, again, we mean no disrespect, but it's pretty, I mean, some of them blatantly say, unlike the Sumerian.
Right. So basically from here on out, all of the pantheons we're going to be talking about have described their gods as having otherworldly qualities or descending from the sky in vessels, such as
ships. They didn't describe them as ships. They didn't have the language or the words for a spaceship, but they described the cosmic egg,
right, or the dragon.
Yeah, Vimanas.
Right, the Vimanas. So we are going to present them as respectfully as possible.
But as they are in written text.
Yes.
I mean, exactly as they are in written text. Tonight is the Egyptian panthology, which I found rather challenging. Me being of the personality type that likes to really dissect, for lack of a better term, like get into, like, so this is who they believed, but why did they believe it, and then how did they get there in the hierarchy of their family tree. So yeah, there were like 400 gods by one estimate. Now there's lots of info out there. Check out, ironically and not surprisingly, the British Museum website, the colonizers of the world. Check out their museum's website, and they've got lots of info about them, as do several other colleges. Like, a lot of my sources, like, that's why it was, because it was so detailed. It had so much information. It was insane, considering not one of my resources that I searched came up, or one search term brought up the anything Egyptian from Egypt. It was all kinds of colleges from all over the world, but the British Museum was the most detailed, not surprisingly. But I lost track of where I was at. I got off on the anti-colonization shit. Go ahead.
Well,
sorry. I know I was talking about the 400 gods.
yes.
I mean, from home, like gods for the house. Then there were gods for the town or city, gods for the state, or there was Upper Egypt, which was at the southernmost point, and then there was Lower Egypt, which was at the Nile Delta, the most fertile of Egypt. And then there's the occasionally mentioned Middle Egypt, but that wasn't a kingdom. That was just like the middle region. But yeah, so you had a god for everything, including little things. Like there was a god whose animal was the millipede. I mean, they covered everything. It was quite enveloping when I was going through it. Anyway, they also have 3 mythos for their creation. What?
Nothing. 3 just seems like an awful lot.
It does, but yeah, it does. I expected 1, which is similar to some of the others we've already covered. So there's the Ogdoad, Ogdoad. From the city, and I guess it depends on what region you're in again. So from the city of Chemnu. In Greek, it was Hermopolis, because the city of Chemnu, their main deity was Thoth.
Okay.
And he is the god. One of his things is wisdom.
Mm-hmm.
And with Greek, the Greek mythos, Hermes was the god of wisdom, and so they named it Hermopolis. But in Egyptian, that name means basically 8 or 8 town, 8, not 8 gods, but the home of the 8 per se, we'll say, from the Middle Egypt times. The number 8 makes reference to the 8, like I said, the 8 deities of the Ogdoad, which are the main characters from this mythos. So they all they were 4 pairs of gods, male and female, each pair. The male of the gods were frog-headed, but human bodies.
Okay.
The female were serpent-headed with human bodies. There are depictions in some of the, like I think at the Temple of Hathor, where they show Thoth in like reliefs on the wall, but not the Temple of Hathor, the temple at Hermopolis, excuse me, because he was their primary deity. They wanted to include him on the 8. But from these 8 gods came the cosmic egg that contained the deity responsible for bringing the rest of the world to life. Amun, or I think it's Amun here, but Amun is also Ra. They have lots of different names too. They're supposed to be different, but then they're also the same.
Right.
But so they represented dark, watery, and unknown and eternal states of the cosmos prior to creation. Nun, which was one of the first, Nun and Naunet, excuse me, represented water. He, or He, and Hauhet represented infinity. Kek and Keket represented darkness, and Amun and Amunet represented the concept of hiddenness, which I think you found something in that with your research that you were doing on it.
Yeah, I think so.
Now, next is the Ennead. The importance of the sun in creation of the world. With this myth, makes reference to a collective of gods known as the Heliopolitan Ennead. They're 9 deities, and with this, they're part of the scholarly thought on this, because most of this is from other research that I did. These first 2 belief systems were put together by scholars from various pieces that they found at different locations, like parts of the story. This story originated in the city of Lunu, meaning the city of the sun in Greek, Heliopolis. With this story, the world begins with the creator god named Atum, which is another word for Amun and the others, like the main creator god. Okay. I just find it interesting how they still keep at least the same enunciation, or syllabic enunciation of things, or close to it. So he was asleep in the chaotic, watery state of pre-creation, and then when he woke up, he created the rest of the first generation of gods by his body fluids. Now, there are 2 different thoughts on this. One is that he spat them out.
Okay.
Well, actually 3 thoughts, sorry. One that he spat them out. One that they just came out of his body. Read into that how you want. And the other is that he used his own sperm to somehow create them. Now, going back to the alien aspect of it, DNA using, anyway. He creates the next series of gods. The first 2 are Shu and Tefnut, who become husband and wife. They birth Geb and Nut. Geb and Nut are representative of earth and air, or the heavens, because I think it's Nut, and I'll get into that. She is always portrayed as that woman basically draped over a man, almost like a yoga pose. Mm-hmm. And he's laying below her, and then there's usually another male figure standing up in between them, holding up. That's their father. Okay. We won't get into the whole incest aspect of this, right? Like we did with the Greeks.
No.
Okay. So Shu and Tefnut, siblings, create Geb and Nut. Geb and Nut, siblings, create Osiris, Isis, Seth, and Nephthys, which Nephthys I know is not on your list, but she is a goddess of air. I just find, because her mother is also goddess of that. Anyway, you want to start with the gods and goddesses? Because
Okay. Well, didn't you have another creation story?
Yes,
2?
the Ptah creation story.
Okay.
Thank you. So, towards the end of the, before the Islamic state moved into Egypt, there was the Ptah empires. they were located in Memphis. So again, the different regions of Egypt. This myth states that a great king known as Shabaka, not Shabaka. Yes,
Yeah,
King
Shabaka.
Shabaka, who was a Nubian pharaoh. And, the Nubians never ruled Egypt. I know that's one of the things that some people say. Because Egypt was ruled for a long time by not just Rome and Greece, but others as well, including Persians from Iran. He found a papyrus in one of their libraries that had been eaten away by worms. Mm-hmm. And upon reading what he could read from it, he felt it was of such great importance that it be carved into stone. And hence, this particular creation story is the only one that was found completely intact in one location, as opposed to the others, like I mentioned, where they found and they put it together. And this was the 25th dynasty, around 705 to 690 BCE.
Okay.
So pretty close to the end of the, polytheistic Egyptian era. In this story, Ptah, which in this approach, and I'm glad because I would have felt bad for leaving this one out. Their thought process for this is similar to the Jewish Gnostic faith, where if you read the Kabbalah is all about thought and envisioning the item. If you can think about it and create it in your mind, you can create it in reality, or that is the thought process. That's very simplistic description of the Kabbalah, I know. But in this story, Ptah basically creates everything with thought. He thinks about it, he wills it, he wants it, and it's there. One line from it, sight, hearing, breathing, they report to the heart, and it makes every understanding come forth. So I found that interesting because it is connected with another side belief that we're not really going to get into. But yeah, I found that interesting. Yes, I'm buzzed.
Yes.
Anyway.
So, getting into the actual gods themselves and goddesses. To start off with, we have Osiris, who was the god of the underworld and the judge of the dead. So when you died, basically he would weigh your heart against a feather. And if your heart was heavier than the feather, then you were deemed to have sinned, and your soul would be devoured by, was it Amet? Amet. Who was a minor deity, but she was worshipped as a goddess.
She was. Just like the house gods. I mean, they had gods for everything.
Right. Her iconography is that of the alligator-headed goddess with the lion body and the hippo legs.
A lioness body and hippo legs, yep.
So basically, she sat in the underworld and waited for people to be judged.
Interesting, though, those are all things that they would have been terrified of. I mean, hippopotamus are nothing to be fucked with.
No, they are not.
And obviously lions and crocodiles either, but,
right.
you know.
So Osiris symbolized death, resurrection, and the cycle of the Nile floods that Egypt relied on for their agriculture. According to myth, he was a king of Egypt who was murdered and dismembered by his brother Set, and he was reassembled by his wife Isis and resurrected, which allowed her to conceive a son by him. Which, if you die before me, I'm I'm totally going to resurrect you and have a kid.
That story, that story gets even more interesting though, because she was, according to some aspects or stories of or interpretations of the myth, she found every body part except his dick.
Right.
And I forget what she used in place of it, but she used something else in place of it and was impregnated with Horus, which was really just Osiris reborn.
Right. And he was represented as a mummified king wearing wrappings that left only the green skin of his hands and face exposed. Okay, so when he was alive, was he green skinned?
That kind of.
Or was he only green skinned after he died?
I could see a detractor saying, "Well, he was dead, so I mean, his skin would be green." No, his skin wouldn't be green, even if it was rotting, which it wouldn't because of the way they do their mummification.
Right.
It would be like gray and start to turn black. It wouldn't be green like a fucking zombie, or the way they portray a zombie in cartoons and stuff. But yeah, that's a good question though.
So next we have Isis, his wife.
And sister too.
And
right?
yes, and sister too. So unlike many gods, she actually cannot be tied to a specific town.
No. She's everybody's.
There's no certain mentions of her in the earliest Egyptian literature, but over time she grew in importance, eventually becoming the most important goddess in the pantheon.
Well, yeah, there was a TV show. There was a TV show.
There was a TV show. Yes, that's right.
Now, granted, we're talking 80s.
Yes, but she would have grown in importance before that. That was the one with the triangle, right?
I think so.
Yeah,
I think so.
Okay.
It's been a long time.
The only reason
it was around the time period of Wonder Woman and the original Hulk and all that shit. So
the only reason I remember that is because in junior high, I think I was 7th grade. I had a math teacher. Her name was Miss Bowen, and when we were discussing the isosceles triangle, she mentioned the TV show Isis and how her symbol was the isosceles triangle. And she was one of my favorite teachers. I
wouldn't know why. She was a nerd.
I wish I knew what she was up to now, or how she was doing.
As long as she's not like my teacher I had in geometry that stood in the garbage can and sang when the class wouldn't be quiet.
No, she was pretty cool. I really liked her. Anyway, moving on. As the devoted wife who resurrected Osiris after his murder and raised their son Horus, Isis embodied the traditional Egyptian virtues of a wife and mother. She was one of the main deities concerned with rites for the dead, which, considering her husband was the god of the underworld and the judge of the dead, that kind of makes sense. With her sister Nephthys, she acted as a divine mourner, and her maternal care was often depicted as extending to the dead in the underworld. So if there was a child who
passed early
and their parents were not there, she would take care of them.
Right.
She was one of the last ancient Egyptian gods to still be worshipped. And in the Greco-Roman period, she was identified with the Greek goddess Aphrodite, and her cult spread as far west as Great Britain, as far east as Afghanistan. And it's believed that depictions of Isis with the infant Horus influenced Christian imagery of Mary with the infant Jesus.
Don't doubt it.
I
don't doubt it.
And if you're not sure what we're talking about, there is a very well-known depiction of Isis with Horus on her lap, and I think she's breastfeeding him.
Doesn't she have the thing?
Yeah. Which I could definitely see that as
there's also
being an influence.
Yeah, because there's, it's either a painting or a statue. I think it's a painting, but of Mary holding Jesus, and she's got a halo behind her. And if that's not an influence, I'm not sure what would be.
So Horus, their son, he is the one who is depicted as having the head of a falcon and the body of a man. He was a sky god associated with war and hunting, which, I mean, kind of makes sense because falcons are really good at hunting. He was the embodiment of the divine kingship, and in some eras he was the reigning king, the reigning king was considered to be a manifestation of Horus.
Yes, but that would then by default mean that they are a manifestation of Osiris.
Yes, because Horus was in some
Osiris reincarnated.
Yes. So he was raised to avenge his father's murder. One tradition holds that he lost his left eye fighting with Seth, who was the person who killed his father. But his eye was magically healed by Thoth. And because the right and left eyes of Horus were associated respectively with the sun and the moon, the loss and restoration of Horus's left eye gave a mythical explanation for the phases of the moon.
I'll buy that for $1.
So then we have Seth, who was the brother of Osiris and Isis, who killed his brother. Was the god of chaos, violence, deserts, and storms. Well, I could see that. He kind of sounds like Ares. His appearance kind of poses a problem for Egyptologists. He's often depicted as an animal or as a human with the head of an animal, but they can't really figure out what animal he's supposed to be. Like, he has a long snout and long ears that are squared at the tips, and in his fully animal form, he has a thin dog-like body with a straight tail and a tuft at the end. But a lot of people think that that particular animal never actually existed. And remember, this is the one that in Stargate...
I was just thinking of that. Where Teal told the joke about the three...
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, like, the...
there was the guard of Hathor, the guard of the serpent guard, and then a Seth guard.
His
nose dribbled. Yeah, his nose dripped or something like that.
Yeah.
I mean, that sounds kind of like. I mean, that's obviously I understand why they consider it a mythical being, but it sounds like maybe a small pony with the tail trimmed so where there's a puff at the end. I mean, that's the only thing. But if you remember the images on Stargate, and I've seen images on, not firsthand, but pictures, where it's kind of it's that long snout, but the body is kind of curved there like that, and the bottom is as well. It kind of looks almost Dr. Seussish. You know what I mean?
Right.
With the tail coming out with a poof at the end of it. It looks kind of weird. Like, I don't know what kind of creature that would be, but...
Yeah,
Well, that could explain his anger issues. Like, you're associated with
with a funny cartoon
a fantasy animal.
So next we have Ptah, who was the head of a triad of gods worshipped in Memphis. I did not know. Did they like Elvis? Sorry. The other two members of the triad were Ptah's wife, who was the lion-headed goddess Sekhmet, and the god Nefertum, who may have been their son. Ptah's original association seems to have been with craftsmen and builders. 4th dynasty architect Imhotep was deified after his death as a son of Ptah, and scholars have suggested that the Greek word Aegyptus, which is the source of the name Egypt, may have started as a corruption of the name of one of Ptah's shrines, which... Hutkapata?
What?
I don't know.
This is not the first time you've read this. What do you?
Well, yeah, but I've never seen it the way. I've never heard the way it's pronounced. It's spelled HWT hyphen KA hyphen PTAH.
Hutkapata.
Okay, whatever. I don't know. I'm better with Greek than I am with Egyptian.
Yeah, I mean, you showed me up to last time, so you know.
And then of course we have. I'm guessing that's supposed to be Ra.
Yeah, well, there's multiple. So what I was saying earlier is like there are multiple spellings of and possibly pronunciations.
Right.
I would assume R-A would not be pronounced the same as R-E.
Right. R-E would be Ray.
Logically, yes. I'm just saying, but there's. I mean, they combine the different. I mean, Ra is combined also with Hathor, and it's like Hathara or so. That's wrong. That's not the correct name. But they combine them, and that creates a new god.
And it might also depend on dialect.
True. So yes, R-E and R-A are the same thing as Ra, which is also the same as Amun, Mit, and Amon-Ra.
Okay.
And Amit-Ra.
So Ra was associated with the sun. He was usually represented as having a human body with the head of a hawk. It was believed that he sailed across the sky in a boat each day and then made a passage through the underworld each night, during which he would have to defeat the snake god Apophis.
Apophis.
Well, there was no H, but whatever.
Again, different spelling, different regions, but that was
Which
Apophis,
totally
the serpent guard.
Makes sense.
In
Stargate, yeah.
Apophis, his guards are the serpent guards,
Yes.
and he is the serpent that.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. I'm sorry. My Egyptian pantheon education solely resides with Stargate, so this is all new to me. What? I'm totally with the Greeks, dude.
True.
Ra's cult was centered in Heliopolis, which is now a suburb of Cairo, and over time he came to be syncretized with other sun deities, especially Amun. Yeah, Amun-Ra. Then we have Hathor,
His consort and bride.
who was usually depicted as a cow or as a woman with the head of a cow, or as a woman with cow's ears.
Well, cattle for them was life. I mean, you got food and they birthed.
Is
And
that
then
where
the
the word
milk.
heifer comes from?
And the milk from, I don't know if that's, actually, I didn't even think about that. Maybe. That's a possibility.
Okay, well, I mean, that's something I need to look up. So Hathor embodied motherhood and fertility. So if you were going to go, like, Greek-wise, she would probably be Hera.
Yeah. Yeah, because Hera was pretty evil, too. I mean, Hathor was, yes, motherhood and all that, but she was ruthless.
Hathor was believed to have protected women during childbirth. She also had an important funerary aspect, being known as the Lady of the West. So the tombs were generally built on the west bank of the Nile. So she would have been Lady of the West. And in some traditions, she would welcome the setting sun every night. Living people hoped to be welcomed into the afterlife in the same way. So as she was welcoming the sun at the end of the day, like anybody who passed away was hoping to be welcomed that way too. And then we have Anubis, who is the jackal-headed god.
I actually like Anubis. I like every freaking depiction of Anubis that I've ever seen.
I did not like him in Stargate though. He was an asshole.
Well, yeah.
Okay. Um, he, I, imagery speaking, he's probably the most well known of the
Probably.
Egyptian gods because when you see the human body with the head of the jackal, like that's Anubis. And I remember in junior high, in history class, we read a book about mythology and it had his picture on the front.
Right.
And I remember that book, like purple cover with Anubis on it, and I had to do a book report on that freaking book.
Well, there's many that believe that the Sphinx was originally
Had the head of Anubis.
had the head of Anubis and was changed by the pharaoh later because it was, I guess, damaged or whatever ego. But there are lots of videos. Like if you do the math, like the head does not fit.
Right, the head
on
is
the
too
body.
the
It's
head is
too
too
small.
small for the body.
But and it also makes sense because there were funeraries, there were graves all around. And I don't agree with this thought, but if those were supposed to be the graves of the pharaohs, the pyramids, then it would make sense that the god of the dead would be overseeing and watching over the graves. What?
Well, yeah. I mean, he was concerned with funerary practices and care of the dead.
And he was supposedly present when you weighed your heart against the feather.
He was present too?
He was present.
Because I know Amit was.
As was Amit, if your heart was heavier than a feather, she would devour your soul. But yeah, that at least the research that I did had, and what I've seen, I know not Hollywood, but
right. And well, no, and you are correct. Before Osiris became the god of the underworld, Anubis had that position. So, yeah, I mean, I can see that. I can totally see that. According to the myth of Osiris, Anubis is the one who embalmed and wrapped Osiris's body, which made him the patron god for embalmers.
right.
And then we have Thoth, the god of writing and wisdom. Sometimes depicted in the form of a baboon.
Yep.
And sometimes as a man with the head of an ibis.
Right.
Or as the sacred ibis.
And then going back to the mythos of the creations, there's the different, one of, and I don't know if I mentioned it. If I'm repeating myself, I apologize. But in
the one with the cosmic egg.
So the great cackler. Did I mention that?
You didn't.
Oh, so there's two different versions of that mythos, where it's a goose that is called the great cackler that lays the egg that gives birth to Amun or Ra. Then in another, it's an ibis, because it was from the city of, was it Luna? Lunu. That, I don't think it was, but anyway, their patron deity was Thoth. So they wanted Hermopolis. So they wanted to include him on the mythos, and so an ibis laid the egg, the cosmic egg that gave us Amun.
Right. So if you're equating the Egyptian to the Greek, Thoth would be the equivalent of Hermes, or in Roman, Mercury, which is why his city was Hermopolis.
Right.
But he was believed to have invented language and the hieroglyphic script, and he was believed to have served
the first emojis.
Right.
I mean, that's basically what we're going back to.
Right.
Anyway.
Yeah, I think I saw a meme about that word.
There is. I'm sorry, I don't mean to.
Well, and it's just like with music. We started out with, like phonographs and then cassettes and then, 8 tracks and then cassettes and then CDs and then digital downloads, and now we're right back to phonographs.
Yeah, like it's come back again.
It's come back around. But he was believed to have served as a scribe and advisor for the gods. He was said to possess knowledge of magic and secrets that were unavailable to the other gods. And in underworld scenes showing the judgment undergone by the deceased after their deaths, he is depicted as weighing the hearts of the deceased and reporting the verdict to Osiris.
So an added
step.
And in some mythos, he is... Did that just stop?
No, it's still recording.
Okay. He is an Atlantean that survived and brought knowledge to the first peoples he found. Oh. Yeah. Yeah, there's all kinds of interesting...
All kinds of it. Sure. All right. Now we're getting to probably my favorite of the Egyptians, Bastet. Also known as Bast.
The Cat Queen.
The Cat Queen, yes. In her earliest forms, she was represented as a woman with the head of a lion or a wild cat. But she took...
They tamed that back a little bit.
Yeah, they tamed it way back to the form of a domestic cat.
But always a black cat. At least the images it was always a black cat.
Which, a black furry cat.
Well, they're always furry.
Well, no, but not all cats. They're the Sphinx.
You're talking about
hairless cat?
That hairless demon?
Yes.
I don't consider that a cat. That's a demon. My best friend had one of those. No. Have you ever heard one of them fucking scream?
Yes.
It's like a dying child. Am I wrong? Am I wrong?
No.
Thank you. It's a demon.
So basically, in the first millennium BCE, she took the less ferocious form of the domesticated cat. She's often represented as a regal-looking cat that is seated, sometimes wearing rings in her ears or nose.
I've even seen some images with rings on the paws.
On the paws, yeah. In the Ptolemaic period, she came to be associated with the Greek goddess of Artemis, the divine hunter and goddess of the moon. Which, cats are pretty good hunters.
And that was right at the end, too. So she's another one I would, in my opinion, next to Isis, that lasted to the end, because the Ptolemaic period is right after Alexander the Great.
Okay.
So, after that, then came, I think, the Persians and then the Muslims, or Islamic State.
And finally, we have Amun, who was worshipped locally in the southern city of Thebes. He was a god of the air, and his name most likely means the hidden one. He was usually represented as a man wearing a crown with two vertical plumes. His animals were the ram and the goose. The great cackler. The goose.
That makes total sense now. They're tying them all together. There's so much info.
There is.
I don't know how they kept up. Well, they didn't have the social media and bullshit we have today. They could focus on their beliefs, but...
Right.
Wow.
After the rulers of Thebes rebelled against a dynasty of foreign rulers known as the Hyksos and reestablished native Egyptian rule throughout Egypt, Amun received credit for their victory. In a form merged with the sun god Ra, he became the most powerful deity in Egypt, which is a position he retained for most of the New Kingdom. And today there is a massive temple complex devoted to Amun Ra at Karnak. And it is one of the most visited monuments in Egypt.
No doubt. There's as is the temple of Hathor. Because there's some of the information I found that at the temple of Hathor there is an entire inscription devoted to the cult of the serpents, or the serpent cult, which again goes back to those first 8
Right.
deities, being frog-headed and
Yeah,
snake-headed.
not the primordials, but the children of the
Right.
primordials.
It's fascinating, mind-blowing at the same time. Like it, as much as I love Egyptology, and yes, I am a huge ancient aliens proponent. There's a lot, like, I mean, 400 gods and goddesses. Need I say more?
Yeah, that's a lot.
I mean, but nothing compared to Hinduism, which we're not going to get into anytime soon. I think our next, how about we do something like the indigenous, like the Australian indigenous peoples and American indigenous,
Okay.
because they're pretty freaking similar. They're, again, I mean, different parts of the world, but they have even similar names for, or what they call them.
Right.
So that'll be our next one.
Yeah. So keep an eye out.
We'll try not to make it like a week and a half. We'll try to do it before that. That's my bad.
Well, so here's the thing. I'm very heavy on the Greek pantheon. He's very heavy with the Celtic. So we are stepping outside of our comfort zones and doing the research to kind of give you guys a good basis for if you wanted to work with a deity, which one would you want to work with? But we also want to give you guys a little bit of the creation stories behind these gods and goddesses so that you understand like where they came from and kind of like how they came to be.
Right.
And with these next few, I mean, this one obviously this one started it, but the next few are also going to be pantheons where they see their gods and goddesses as not necessarily being human,
Yeah.
not necessarily coming from here.
Some of them even talk about they came from the Pleiades system.
Yes.
Like, and how did they even ancient peoples from 2,000 years ago or
Even
5,000 years
the
ago?
Pleiades.
No, yeah, like because it's not they're not easily visible. You can see one of the stars some of the year.
Right.
So yeah. Anyway.
But that concludes our brief tutorial on the Egyptian gods and goddesses.
We appreciate you and thank you for watching.
And keep an eye out on our Instagram page because I will be posting the rules for the drawing we're going to do, the giveaway.
Is that what that jar is for, or is that going to be a separate thing?
That's something else. That's something else.
Oh, that was for the event we just did.
Yes, that's for the event we just did.
Which we need to pull
Yes,
that name.
I need to pull that name, but I also need to get our email list going.
Do we want to mention the event we're trying to go to, or since we haven't confirmed it, we don't want to mention it yet?
I think I'm going to wait on that. I think I'm going to wait on that.
On May 11th in Gilbert.
Yes, I'm going to wait on that.
Okay.
Until I make sure that I actually get all the stuff I need to go.
Copy that.
Okay. Anyway, we love y'all.
I was just thinking that. One love, y'all. Have a good night.
Peace out, witches.
Peace.